Evening folks, and welcome to this demonstration of my Timex WS4 Expedition watch. And the fact that you can barely see my fingers shows quite how big this watch is. It's a very good size. There's a normal watch for comparison, and it's probably 2 and a bit times the size, and it's very thick as well. And that's because it's got a lot of sensors and a big battery in it. So it's aimed at this sort of outdoor use, so it's got a pressure sensor for doing altitude and atmospheric pressure, a temperature sensor for doing temperature, and a compass sensor as well. So in the main time mode, you've got the watch face kind of display, which is showing the time, the digital time, the date, the temperature, and what it thinks the weather's doing. It thinks it's raining at the moment. It isn't actually, but it's kind of guessing what it's going to do based on the atmospheric pressure and the temperature, I suppose. There's a little legend say what the functions it's got here. And then these icons at the bottom here are showing some of the other functions that the watch does and whether they're active. So this one is the alarm function, and the little black bar means the alarm's active. This one is the chronograph indicator, so if there's a black bar there, it means the chrono's running. And these two are for the countdown timer and whether they're running and set to repeat. So it's a plastic watch, but this surround here is actually metal, so nice and hard wearing. This secondary display under here can actually switch between showing the date or the altitude or the barometric pressure, depending on what you want. So then there's quite a lot of things this watch does, so I'm not going to try and explain them all in detail. I'm going to kind of whiz through them and point out the things of particular interest or uniqueness to this watch. So the first mode is the Altimeter Mode, and it shows, when you go into it, it shows the peak, the accumulated altitude, so it's how much you've gone up and down, and then the current altitude and a graph of what it's been doing. But because it's been sat on my desk for the last 24 hours, there's not much to see there. And then when you press the button again, if you spent a bit of time in your mode, it goes back to the main time mode, so you'll notice I have to keep scrolling through them. So the next mode after Altimeter is Barometer, and again it shows the highs, the lows, and a graph of the last, I think it's 36 hours because I reset it about 24 hours ago. And it's showing the time there and the temperature. So I'm just going to go back and then go to the next mode, which is the Compas Mode. And in this is the only mode where it doesn't use this as a watch face, because it's using that as an indicator to where north is, and it's showing the time there, maintaining and a degree reading of the compass there. So if I turn that, you can see that's changing. And it does turn off after a little while, this mode, I guess to preserve the batteries. So the next mode after compass is the Stopwatch or Chrono mode, and it's a fairly normal chronograph function. You've got a start and a stop button, and you hold that button to reset it. But again, it's showing the normal time, the altitude, and the temperature. So the next mode is the review mode, and unfortunately I haven't done too much, so it's showing there's no data stored. But what this mode would normally do, if you've been on a bit of an expedition, it would show you the sort of maximums and minimums and some graphs of some of the stuff you've done on that expedition, so the altitude and the pressure. And it also will tell you, if you've told it to, the time above a target altitude. You can actually set an altitude alarm on this watch, and it will tell you how long you've spent above that altitude, which, if you're doing very high altitude mountaineering, is something you need to know. So the next mode is the countdown timer mode, and it's currently set for 5 minutes there, and if you start it, it'll start to count down. Very familiar functionality. You've got the clock mode again there. The next mode, I think, is the alarm mode, and this is where one of the good features of the watch is, which would be really useful on many normal watches, is you can set the alarm to go off weekdays only, every day, on a particular day, or weekends only. And if you're, a 9 to 5 worker like me, it's very useful to be able to set whether it's weekdays. You can set an alarm just for the weekdays. That's very useful function. I'll just turn it on now, turn it off. And finally, the last mode is the calibrate mode. And you can actually pre-calibrate it for certain altitudes. So because the atmospheric pressure changes with altitude, if you know you're going to be going on a trip up a mountain and you want to check the atmospheric pressure at various different waypoints, you can actually preset some altitudes and reset your atmospheric pressure. So they really have thought through you using this watch in the real world. And finally, the last feature, which is unique, well, I'm not sure it's unique, but I like about this watch, is the light. So I'm not sure, it's got a luminescent backlight, but somehow what appears, the darker segments actually appear lighter when you put the light on, but not, as you can see, they're still dark there, but if I tilt it like this, you can actually see they're actually lighter when there's no background light. So very unusual function. And also, if you hold this button down for a few seconds, and it's going to beep. So it's got a night mode, and any of the button presses will actually activate the light for a few seconds. So if you are out there at night, you don't have to keep pressing the light button. Any of the button presses you do to try and operate the watch will keep it lit. So that's it. The Timex Expedition WS4, a big chunk of a watch, and the only thing I would say about it is, although it is very outdoorsy, the water resistance is pretty limited, so you can't take it diving or anything like that. But maybe that's because the sensors are a bit too sensitive. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this one, and I'll see you soon. Cheerio.